Our first guest tonight has been described by President Trump as a great American hero, referring to his role in spearheading the efforts to release the Republican memorandum detailing widespread FISA court surveillance abuses. Joining us tonight, Congressman Devin Nunes, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and as the president put it, actually the hero in this entire investigation of the intelligence community, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the FISA courts. It goes on and on. Mr. Chairman, great to have you with us. You are focused right now on some questionnaires from former heads of the FBI, the DNI, the head of the FBI, James Comey. How is that going? Have they responded and met the deadlines that you've set?
Well, Lou, first off, thank you so much for having me on your show, and thank you for your continued coverage of this. You've done a great job, and I've been watching it all throughout. Also, I want to say that the members on my committee, the Republicans, they've gone through, they've taken a lot of heat, just like I have from the mainstream media, and so they deserve a lot of praise too. So just let me update you on where we're at. So we sent out a questionnaire a couple weeks ago, asking top officials in the Obama administration and the current administration what they knew about the dossier and when they knew it. In other words, things like when did they know that the Democrats had paid for this dossier, and then who did they tell? The deadline was last Friday. We got back quite a few of those. There were a few people who asked for an extension, and there are a few people who we have not heard from. But as we've said, if they don't respond by the end of this week, then they will be getting subpoenaed to do a deposition.
And the information that you're seeking is obviously critical to the national security and part of your role in oversight of the intelligence community itself. For there to be any obstruction or delay here, it would be unconscionable and unconstitutional.
Well, we're way past delay because it took us nearly a year to find all this information out. In fact, now we've learned that the FBI and the Department of Justice knew that the Democrats in the Hillary campaign had paid for the dossier. Now, why is the dossier so important? I think a lot of your viewers need to understand. Well, the dossier is at the center of all of this, right? So the dossier was this dirt that was dug up on President Trump, paid for by the Democrats, using a former British spy who supposedly got this from Russians. Well, right then and there, that's exactly what President Trump and his campaign was accused of, that they were coordinating with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary and leak it out. We have no evidence of that, but we have clear evidence on this side. The dossier was also used to get a warrant to spy on Trump associates in the campaign. We have a big problem with that. That was why we put the memo out, and that is why we have been fighting to get the truth out. And now what we're trying to look at, kind of the second step here of this, is looking at who knew about this dossier at the higher levels, not just the FBI, but other agencies, and when they knew about it. And that's what we're waiting on right now. Including,
obviously, the intelligence community, including the FBI. And one would think the White House itself and the national security apparatus of the country. As you move forward in this investigation, what you call phase 2, focusing on the State Department, the Clinton State Department, some call it still the Clinton State Department, because so many of her associates, longtime associates, cronies in the minds of some, remain there and remain in powerful positions and had, it appears, a role in some of the activity that basically amounts to pure corruption, political corruption of executive branch departments, including the State Department.
Well, what's so fascinating about the State Department is the first interview I had really done in many, many months. The day that the memo came out, I went on another Fox show, Brett Baer's Special Report. And in that long interview, I talked about that we were now moving on to the State Department.
Right.
Well, it didn't take but less than a little over 24 hours, and suddenly there were people that were at the State Department who were coming out and spilling their guts on national television, basically telling the American public everything that we knew, or that at least we thought we knew, and now the public has learned. Just by the people who have now come out and admitted. Now, they're saying they didn't do anything wrong, but they have admitted that Sidney Blumenthal, longtime Hillary Clinton confidant, and Corey Scheer, another longtime Clinton confidant, were both handling dirty information, funneling it into the State Department. State Department was working with Christopher Steele, and supposedly there is this second dossier that is out there that was then passed over to the appropriate authorities. So we're still tracking this down. There's a long way to go in this investigation, but I think people get the gist of it. I think it would be problematic if close Hillary Clinton confidants were communicating with Steele, getting dirt from these mysterious places, most likely Russian, supposedly, that all ends up to be false, and feeding it into our intelligence agencies.
And the work that you and your committee have had to do to get to this level of revelation, to give the American public some knowledge about what their government has been up to and some very bad actors have been doing within that government in some of the most critical and vulnerable, sensitive areas, including the intelligence community, the Justice Department, the FBI, the State Department. Could you have anticipated the reach of the corruption that is now, in large measure, thanks to your and your committee's diligent work before the American people?
You know, it's a great question. So I would say that we had a pretty good idea that the dossier was somehow connected to the Clinton campaign, because it was just made no sense that who else would go get that kind of dirt.
Yeah.
It was just, and it was so outrageous. I mean, anybody at first glance would look at that and just reject it out of hand, because nobody's going to give any American 19% of the Russian gas company, which would be worth billions and billions of dollars. So just on the face of it, it looks totally phony. But I will tell you, what did amaze us was the fight that FBI and DOJ knew about it, because they had told us otherwise, and then the fight that they put up in order for us not to find the truth. We had to eventually, as you know, take Fusion GPS to court in order to get their bank records, so we could figure out who in fact was paying them to put together the dossier.
Well, Congressman, again, we all thank you and your committee for all that you do and have done. Without you, the Americans' right to know would still be frustrated. We know this is a very frustrating enterprise for you, but rewarding for the country.
Well, let me just tell you, and one of the battles that we've had to face here is getting the media to cover it. And I'm so thankful for people like yourself, Fox Business and Fox News and others, that have been willing to get to the truth. And it hasn't been easy, because most of the mainstream media is ignoring the truth. But we will continue to probe for the answers, and as soon as we get those answers, we can make them public. We appreciate the work that you and others have been doing to get this out to the public.